Good evening. Are we live? Can you hear me in the back there? Okay, great. So, welcome. My name is Councilmember Michael Rainville. I have the honor to represent the 3rd Ward. You are in the 3rd Ward. And I want to welcome you tonight along. And first of all, I have to introduce Councilmember Latricia Vita, 4th Ward. So thank you so much, Latricia, for coming tonight. The next event. And did I see Councilmember Koski here too as well? Are you here somewhere? There she is. Councilmember Koski is here from the 11th. And the next community meeting will be in Councilmember Vita's ward. So it's my honor to introduce ELEFA tonight. I'm going to turn it over to them, but thank you so much for coming. Plenty of food in the back. The restrooms are out in the hallway to your left. And let's welcome ELEFA to the 3rd Ward. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to, first of all, let me gauge the audience, just by show of hands. How many people who were at our previous first meeting? Very good. How many of you not at the meeting don't know who we are? All right, very good. We are ELEFA, Effective Law Enforcement for All, an organization made up of policing experts, of policing chiefs, assistant chiefs, analysts, other lawyers. I'm getting to it. Policy writers, lawyers who work in policing and who are both civilian and sworn, who were in departments that were monitored, just like Minneapolis Police Department is now, and who monitored other police departments. And we were a cross-section of experts who were hired to be the independent evaluator here. I'm Michael Harrison, two-time police chief, New Orleans and Baltimore, both of whom were under a reform initiative just like Minneapolis is in. And you're going to meet the other members of the ELEFA team. So thank you for just giving me a moment to tell you who we are. Thank you to the Minneapolis, all the Minneapolis community organizations, members of the public who are here tonight. I know you all pressed your way to be here. It's very important to be here to talk about the work that's being done, the work that has been done, and the work that will be done. Thank you so much, Councilmember Rainville and your staff for helping us coordinate for tonight. Once again, thank you, Councilmember Vito, Councilmember Koski, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. Special thank you to the Ukrainian and American Community Center for allowing us to use this beautiful venue. It means a lot. Thank you to Surdix Catering, who's responsible for our food tonight, to make sure we were fed, that you wouldn't be in here. The hardest thing to do is to compete with growling stomachs when you're trying to give information. Thank you to our City Attorney's Office implementation team, the Minneapolis Police Department implementation unit, and the Office of Community Safety communications team. One more housekeeping before we get started. For those who are observing Ramadan, we have food prepared, to-go plates prepared for those who are fasting, who perhaps maybe want to take food with them for later. You may do so. We have that for you. And we have a dedicated place set aside to my left, out of the middle door or to my left for private prayer should anyone observe or need to observe while we are in the middle of this meeting. So having gotten that out of the way, thank you again for being here. Tonight, we'll speak about a few different things. We're going to talk about our semi-annual compliance report. We're going to talk about how we measure compliance. We're going to talk about policy, of course, training. Then we'll hear from our leader, David, who's going to give a look ahead to talk about what you can expect in the future with this work. And then we'll certainly open it up for questions from you. And we'll answer any questions for as many as you have for as long as we need to make sure everyone is satisfied with the work that we're doing and you are informed about the work we're doing, the work the police department is doing to make the reforms that we are observing and monitoring, that they are actually doing the work. Before we start, let's start with this video clip. We're going to play a video clip for you just to get started. It's a police leadership retreat that the chief called for, Chief O'Hara, and brought in a number of former chiefs who have been through this in their departments to make sure he invests in leadership development for his command staff. We were there. David and I, this was last week, we were here the chief allowed us to make some opening remarks, and we applauded the chief for this initiative to make the investment into the professional development of the command staff, sergeants and above, all of whom were there to hear. And so we applauded that effort, and we wanted to make sure the men and women who are sergeants and above heard us say how good this was for that investment to be made into their professional development.
A police chief spent time in Minneapolis sharing insight with a room full of officers. After the 1992 beating of Rodney King and after findings of significant corruption and misconduct, LAPD underwent a significant transformation brought on by a federal consent decree. Well, now Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara hopes to replicate some of LA's success as his department looks to rebuild trust after the murder of George Floyd. Our Babs Santos spoke with law enforcement today. Babs joins us live in Minneapolis to recap it for us. Babs?
Well, Randy, today former LA Police Chiefs Charlie Beck and Michael Moore had high praises for what they saw out of Minneapolis's leadership during their time in the Twin Cities, saying they believe the department is really positioned well going forward. And they said this all during a day-long speaking segment, both of them describing consent decrees as an opportunity to grow rather than a burden on a police department. LAPD's consent decree lasted for more than a decade. So these men were speaking from experience when brainstorming ways for Minneapolis to successfully go through a consent decree of its own.
That's the message here, is that there is a way forward. LAPD recovered from that. It took us a decade, and a consent decree. Everything in that consent decree made this a better police department. Was it hard? Yes. Is it expensive? Yes. Does it take resources? Yes. But is it worth it? Yes, yes, yes.
And after all of this, Minneapolis police officers told us they really appreciated it today. One telling me she was teary-eyed because she felt this is the type of support they've been craving since 2020. Another saying he just found it very helpful as they all look for ways to move forward from this. And moving forward, MPD leaders say their consent decree is something that they plan to embrace regardless of anything coming out of our nation's capital. Live in Minneapolis, Babs Santos, Fox 9.
All right, Babs, thank you.
So we thought that was an extremely important thing for the chief to do, and we wanted to applaud the chief publicly in front of his rank and file for putting on that professional development and for bringing the right people in the room. And so you've seen the clip. Currently, the Minneapolis Police Department is in what we call the foundational phase of its reform implementation efforts. And the activities in this phase include, but are not limited to, updates on policy and training, creating technology systems that are fully capable, that integrate and synchronize with other technologies, that migrates data efficiency so that we can audit and assess the work that they are doing, which will come in the future, and then advancing a culture of accountability for the agency. All of these factors are designed to improve officer performance based on an improved set of standards that are compliant with the settlement agreement's requirements. ELEFA completed its first progress report, which covered activities related to this foundational phase that took place between March 18th, 2024 and September 30th, 2024. Our full report is available on our website at elefamn.org. Some of the key observations ELEFA was able to collect during this reporting period include, and by the way, there are copies of that report here at the desk as you enter. Some of you may have already picked up one, but feel free to get them and take them with you, and it is online on our website. The things that we collected during the reporting period include updates on the status of completing internal affairs cases. 2, the resources the city's Department of Civil Rights are leveraging to support the work of the Office of Police Conduct Review, an effort by MPD to complete historical use of force incident quality reviews. The first progress report also outlines the status on policy development, training efforts related to the settlement agreement's requirements, as well as MPD efforts towards supporting officer wellness and improving working conditions. Now, while this first progress report provided an overall status on MPD and the city's efforts as of the end of September, ELEFA has continuously been working with the parties to maintain focus on a series of discrete implementation goals that are critical to achieving success in the foundational phase. And so when I say the foundational phase, a lot of the infrastructure either did not exist and had to be built from scratch, or it had to be rebuilt. It was like saying, okay, MPD, we want you to drive a car, but the road was not built. And so MPD has been building the road that it will drive the car that it is building on that new road. And so that's what we mean by the foundational phase. Going forward, building on the foundational work that's still being done, ELEFA will move into the evaluation phase where we will be conducting audits and inspections with community input and feedback, as well as independent evaluated team evaluations, which will then take us to compliance determination. Tonight, other members of our team will be sharing updates on our focus in this foundational phase, which again are policy and training. And while the end of the year one mark is considered to be March of this year, in many instances, the updated status on these efforts were reported to have exceeded the time. ELEFA acknowledges that these goals were very ambitious, but so is this task that the MPD has undertaken. This is one of the most ambitious things a police department can do, and they have set very, very ambitious goals, and we acknowledge the work that has been done to meet these goals, and in each instance where goals were reprioritized, the MPD has been in close coordination with us to explain the context, to explain the rationale behind why any adjustments occurred. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Arlinda Westbrook to come and take this further.
I'm actually just one of the lawyers he wouldn't talk about. I was a civilian, so I'm one of the lawyers he pretended not to speak about. What I want to talk about a little bit is the backlog that many have an interest in that occurred in the OPCR and the IA divisions. One of the things I want to start with that we reported on was OPCR got off to a very, very slow start. And mainly, as we reported, is because similar to what the chief was saying in reference to building a road, there were very limited resources. They basically had lost their leadership and most of their investigators all in one swoop. That also contributed, as we've been reviewing, most years that office was operating with deficiencies in reference to staffing. Now, what I'm happy to report is that there's been tremendous improvement in that. The city has invested many resources. There are a number of hires. We have new Director Phillips, who's heading that unit, who's doing an exceptional job. We have a new Director of OPCR. We have multiple investigators, new civilian investigators that they've hired. They still have 3 hires. Anybody looking for a position? We still are looking for more hires in the OPCR office. One of the things I want to first talk about is after they did their substantial hiring, the big thing, as you're going to hear today, is when you start that process of hiring, now you need to train. So, of course, that will continue to have some level of delay in terms of getting them up to speed to investigate. So one of the things we requested, and the director requested from the city, is to hire an external investigator team to assist them as they were building their staff. That team is in place and has been assisting with investigating some of their backlog cases. What we've seen since the time of the hiring of Director Phillips, her staff, and her new investigators, she put them through tremendous training. They started a process of working through the backlog, and we continuously seen a decline in the case investigations that they're doing so far. What we're really looking at first is how quickly they're able to get through each phase. So one of the major phases in an investigation is the intake phase, and that's the phase where you determine what the allegations are in that case. 100% of those cases have been classified, moved through the intake phase, and are now in administrative investigation. So I want to be clear. The intake is only the classification of those cases. They had an extreme backlog with just the intake. They've been able to move through and move all of those cases into investigation. So right now, they are in the investigative phase for most of their cases. They started with about 120 of those cases. They've been able to, within their period of time, close at least 4. That means have gone all the way through the process, all the way through the panel process. And there's 117 that are still pending and open. But what's important is that we're seeing a decrease in the amount of time it is taking them to get from intake to investigation to closure. As they continue to build their resources, they build their team, they are driving that number slower. The next phase will be where we need to do a deep dive of all of the systems and the processes so we can make a determination of what is causing some of the delays in some of the investigations. So what Director Phillips and her team is working on now is getting more data on how quickly they're able to close the cases and what is that process and what piece of their process of investigation is slowing down the movement of the cases. So one of the things that they are quickly doing is starting, and what I'm very happy about, and I want to thank Chair Reeves, who's here, Latanya Reeves is here over the CCPO. One of the things is that they called for and asked for them to start reporting on a regular basis. I'm very happy to say that the IA and OPCR gives a report every month in reference to the backlog of cases. You can go online and get those reports from the CCPO site, and you can look at, and because I only have a short period of time, you can look at more detail and more granular information on how they're handling all of their investigations. The next piece I want to talk about is the IA, because we know OPCR does all external investigation, meaning investigations that come from the public or that are initiated from a public complaint. IA handles all internal investigations. I will summarize quickly for IA, who has what I consider more resources. They had more individuals. Each of these groups put a plan together for how to handle their backlog. And one of the plans for the IA was to take officers throughout the department who had already had some training in internal affairs and allow for them to do some of their investigations along with an external investigator also for IA. So they have been able to move through 75% of their backlog cases have been completed through investigation and through supervisory approval. They still have not been to panel for the actual discipline, but the investigations themselves are complete. 36% of their cases have gone all the way through the entire process, all the way through panel in reference to the IA. So again, since the beginning of the implementation of this and putting their plans together, each unit is moving through their backlog, and we're seeing progress. And we will continue to report on that progress, and they are continuing to report on that progress at the CCPO meeting every month. The other thing that came up in our first report was about use of force cases and having a backlog in reference to use of force cases. I want to put that in context. Use of force cases have been investigated. All of their use of force cases have been investigated by a line supervisor and a higher level supervisor. All of those cases have gone through use of force investigations. The thing that has been delayed is the review of those cases. IA has a third level of review where the internal affairs reviews whether the field officers and the supervisor have done a thorough investigation of use of force. That's the piece that has been delayed, that has needed extra resources. They hired, maybe about 3 weeks ago, a company to assist with external reviews of these use of force cases. And they also have been able to drive their numbers down. They used to average about 22 reviews a month. Now with the external investigator that they've hired, which is in a sense an addition to their staff, they're able to do about 48 of those a month. And so each of them are working through those. The next time, in terms of our year report, we'll speak more about the projected dates, and after we've verified that the information they're giving us in reference to when these cases would be closed, then we will further update you on when we will have a completion of all the cases. But I can report that we are seeing progress compared to what we saw on day one. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Uh-oh. Good evening, everyone. I think it's not working. I'm happy to come over here, but for those of you who were at our early meetings, you know that I have a complete inability to stand in the same place while I speak. That's why they make me use the lavalier, but I'm gonna do my best. But I'm David Douglas. I'm the president and founder of Effective Law Enforcement for All, and I serve as the co-independent evaluator along with Michael, for those of you who don't know me. So I just want to briefly touch on...
No?
Still not.
I don't think the mic's working.
Is the mic working? I don't have any clicking to do. But thank you. So really, here's what I just want to spend a few minutes on. I just want to sort of quickly review this slide and where we are on some of these tasks, all of which are detailed in our report. And then what I want to talk about is how we monitor. So for those of you who are at our prior meetings, we've done some of that, and we've taken a deep dive into certain topics, and we're going to do that. After I speak, Lisa is going to talk more about the policy process and where we are and how that works, and be a little more granular about that. And then after that, Bill is going to begin talking about training, because as we move into year 2, training will become a bigger part of what we do. And as we've said before, part of our goal for these meetings is not just to report on where the department and the city stand in terms of compliance, but to help everybody understand how we go about our work and the work they've done and the challenges. And we want you to take you on that journey with us. So each of these meetings, we will pick a topic or two and take a deeper dive. And then we'll talk about, see? Wait, no, I got it now. It's working now, right? There we go. Yeah, that was a save. Okay. And then we'll just talk a few minutes, as Michael said, about what's coming next, and we'll do question and answer. So this is a chart that was taken from our evaluation, our first progress report, and it just summarizes where they are on a number of the tasks that they're called upon to complete. So Arlinda has talked about the backlog cases that's in progress. As she indicated, it was a significant challenge, but the department is picking up speed and moving it along, and we're encouraged by that. They've updated, they're updating their body-worn camera review operating procedures, and forecast that should be done by July. That's really kind of also a foundational element, because it's the body-worn cameras that really enable us to audit and to really see what's going on the streets. So it's a very powerful tool. They have completed their facilities, equipment, and technology plan. We've reviewed it, and we find it meets the requirements of the consent decree. Now, of course, that's the plan. They've now got to implement the plan. So we're not saying the plan's been implemented, but we reviewed the plan. We believe it not only meets the requirements of the settlement agreement, but goes a little bit beyond it, sets a higher standard. And the same is true for the data systems plan. We've reviewed the plan. It's a good plan. It's compliant. Now we'll be looking at implementation and reporting on that as that progresses. The rest of the things I think are really ours. We had to launch our website. We promised that we would do a community map. It's on our website. If you haven't looked at it, please do, and you have information to contribute, please do that. And we are hosting our community meetings, and we've published our first progress report. So overall, for the first year, things are proceeding well. And I think importantly, I think we all agree, Minneapolis is actually further ahead in its first year than any other city we're aware of in our consent decree. So that is a pretty significant achievement, something the part in the city and all of you should be proud of. So now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. You'll remember last time Lisa talked about overview, how we review policies, but it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. Some of you have commented on these policies. I know Michelle has and others have. So we're going to have Lisa show you a little bit about why it is so hard to revise policies.
All right, let's see if I can get this thing. Oops, all right. Apologies, I'm learning how to click. All right, my goodness. All right, patience. We'll start here. My name is Lisa Fink. For those of you who were not at the last meeting that we held in November, I will briefly introduce myself. I am the policy lead on the ELEFA team. I started off this work of policing policy and police reform in 2017 in the earliest days of the Baltimore Police Department's consent decree. I was hired on by the department as a civilian, not sworn. I don't have a policing experience, but was brought on in 2017 to write police policy under the federal consent decree, and very quickly was pushed into the deep end of learning and writing policy that was under DOJ oversight, as well as helping to manage certain topic areas of that federal consent decree and assisting with training development. So fast forward, I've had the opportunity to work on a few other projects where police departments have been under federal oversight, and I was brought on with the ELEFA team to work on the policy portion of the consent decree. So, excuse me, the settlement agreement, the state settlement agreement. Apologies for the confusion. So at the last meeting in November, I showed this graphic, which basically discusses the process that MPD is going through for policy creation, for garnering feedback, and then for reviewing policies, in particular on the 4 core topic areas identified in the settlement agreement. So this is just a refresher of kind of the basics of the process for creating policy. And then we also talked about the different elements that our team is looking for when we are reviewing policies that are submitted to us by MPD to assess for compliance. So of course, first and foremost, we're looking for compliance with the settlement agreement. That is our task as monitors of the MDHR settlement agreement. But we're also looking at and ensuring that policies are clear and executable. Officers know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. We're looking to ensure that the policies meaningfully incorporate public feedback. We're ensuring that the policies are aligning with the guiding principles. The settlement agreement does a really great job at outlining guiding principles in each section of the agreement, and so we're ensuring that nothing clashes with what those guiding principles are. And then ultimately, we are also looking for best practices. One of the benefits of our team that has a vast experience working on policing projects and police oversight and reform in various jurisdictions across the country is that we have a pretty good understanding, and we are tapped into kind of the national picture of best practices in policing. So this is what our team is looking for when we are reviewing policy. So since I last spoke to some of you, and I know some of you are, this is your first community meeting, the work on policy has been ongoing and unyielding. For the last many months, there has been intensive work on policy, so I wanted to give you a little more information about how the policy review process has really evolved since the last time I presented on policy. Let me make sure, yes, okay, so the settlement agreement has a paragraph 404, that gives us a bare bones structure of how the policy review process and timing should go. Basically, it gives MDHR 14 days to review and provide feedback on a policy. and it gives ELEFA 30 days to review and approve or provide feedback on policy. But what we found is that a much more collaborative and iterative process has developed to ensure that not only the policies get done, but they get done well. So MPD has really been working closely with both ELEFA and MDHR to address concerns that both we and MDHR have raised, to discuss ways to improve policy language, and to do our best to ensure that these policies reflect best practices, incorporate public feedback, and allow for accountability. So I just wanted to give you a little idea of what this process has looked like over the last several months. So first, MPD does extensive internal work on either crafting a new policy or updating policies, working with internal stakeholders to ensure that they incorporate settlement agreement requirements, to ensure that they meet the needs of the department, and to ensure that they are incorporating public feedback. Then MPD first is participating in an informal back and forth with ELEFA, where we are always providing written feedback, and oftentimes we're also having meetings to discuss suggested changes, to ensure that it is updated to incorporate all of the settlement agreement requirements, and for MPD to get any clarity on kind of any questions that may come up of how to make the policy better. After this informal collaboration, MPD is then incorporating the feedback and is sending back an updated version of the policy to both MDHR and ELEFA for what we've been referring to internally as a workshopping period. So in this workshopping period, MDHR provides additional feedback. Oftentimes, ELEFA also provides additional feedback. And then there's this process where MPD is attempting to address the feedback, apply edits, and we're having these actual sessions where we're all meeting together, and oftentimes it's several workshopping sessions per policy to talk through MDHR's comments, ELEFA's comments, to discuss questions and concerns, to discuss points of contention. And throughout these meetings, we're allowing ourselves to, MDHR is resolving issues that, did I click it accidentally?
No.
Well, I actually just clicked it now, so here we go. Okay, apologies, I don't know how to use the clicker.
No, that wasn't you.
Oh, okay. So as we continue to have these sessions, we're whittling it down to just focus on the areas of discussion as we're moving toward getting this policy that's in really good shape. The workshopping sessions really give us the opportunity to work collectively as all stakeholders, not all stakeholders, but as the main parties of the case in order to work together to get these policies in the best condition possible. And of course, these sessions also allow us to discuss public feedback that was received in any instances where MPD has applied feedback, or perhaps places where we're raising questions about maybe you all need to consider this a little more closely. MPD has been receiving regular feedback, especially from CCPO, CUAPB, and other regular commenters, and it's been really helpful to have those added perspectives in those conversations. So back in November, I showed a similar slide. To this one, this is simply another view. It looks a little fuzzy, but it's basically to give you an idea of what this policy looks like after we've been going back and forth. You'll see line edits, right? All of the comments were resolved, which is why they're that far away. But we've been making comments throughout, and we're kind of talking to each other both through the document and then in our sessions in order to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're really working through the issues where there's concern or potential contention, right? And what this really has allowed us to do is to have discussion about getting a better product, to make sure that these policies are really aligned with best practices and work for both the department and the community. And what I can say, based on my personal experience, and I know others on our team have had this experience, that this iterative process, though it is time intensive and discussion heavy, is how it often plays out in jurisdictions that are under oversight, particularly federal oversight as well. So just to give you an idea of how much work has been going into this. So the use of force policy topic area includes 14 policies that are directly on use of force, and then also de-escalation, critical decision making, and critical decision-making in high-risk situations. So of those 17 policies, we had 10 workshopping sessions between MDHR, ELEFA, MPD, and the city. Each workshopping session is often at least an hour and a half or 2 hours long, and we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the language. We're debating and trying to get to a place where everybody feels good about the language. The crisis intervention policy, we had 4 workshopping sessions with the parties. For the IAOPCR investigations manual, first ELEFA met with the city and MPD no less than 5 times before workshopping even started, and then we've had 3 workshopping sessions since. And one thing I just want to emphasize is that the ultimate goal of all of this work isn't necessarily just to get compliant policies, but is to really get policies that align with best practice of 21st century policing. And what has been refreshing is that oftentimes in those conversations, MPD has been very willing to take a lot of the suggestions and to work through language to ensure that it's reflective of best practices. So you're probably wondering the current status of policy. One other thing I wanted to say. What I was going to say is I would just simply wanted to remind everybody, policy is often step 1. When it comes to these massive agreements that have a whole bunch of content, what they are really requiring is this wholesale transformation that starts with policies, getting to a place where you have a solid policy. But then the next stage is you actually have to train all of the members on that new policy so they actually know what they're supposed to do when they get on the street. Once the training has been developed and conducted, that's when you get to the policy actually being in effect and you see implementation on the street. So implementation is the next phase where police officers are equipped with new policies, new training, they're on the street implementing them. And then there's the assessment phase. In this instance, we have both MPD that's doing internal assessments, and then ELEFA is also doing our own independent assessments. And this is the task at hand with pretty much every requirement of the agreement. Right, okay, so I think maybe I'm ready for this. So since we last presented, there has been a massive amount of work. These are just the policies where ELEFA and MDHR have been involved in collaboration with MPD. And a lot of them have been multiple back and forths as I just described. In addition, we know MPD is doing work on these policies that we haven't yet seen, right? They're working on crafting and developing policies that they're going to need to submit to us for year 2. So the work has been has been a lot. And there's been a lot of parallel work going on, right? Because all of these things we're trying to get done at the same time. And that's why in recent months, we've started to stagger the work a little bit so that we can ensure that we're making significant progress on certain policies and we get some good amount of work done as soon as possible. So these policies that are bolded, might be a little hard to see, are the ones that that will be either completed or very nearly completed by the end of this month, which is going to be the end of ELEFA's second reporting period. And the other policies that are not highlighted, but we have been working on, we're continuing to churn on them so that, as soon as we get into next month, into April, we can start picking them up and working and making continued progress forward. So this is simply to give you an idea of the massive amount of work that's been done, and I wanted to come back and kind of, now that we have more experience with how the work is looking each and every day, wanted to really give you an idea of how it's playing out. So next, we're going to turn to Bill, who's going to speak about the training piece, which of course is the next stage in getting all of this work accomplished.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Murphy. I'm a retired Deputy Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, and yes, I do know Charlie Beck. He was my boss. In fact, when I retired 8 years ago, I was a Deputy Chief. My direct boss was Michael Moore. You just heard him. He ended up being the chief after Charlie Beck, and obviously we all worked for Charlie Beck. What Charlie said is 100% accurate. I lived it. He said it was a decade. Actually, it was 12 years. It was 12 long years. But it's hard work. It's not easy, like he said. It's not cheap, but you're going to be a way, way better police department for it. I go around the country. I think I've been in now working on consent decrees for 25 plus years. I've seen worked on 5 or 6 of them. And you'll be way better as a police department if you go down that road. And I know, I am 100% confident with this team here, we're gonna make MPD a much better police department, one you're gonna be proud of. Real quickly, before I get into training up here, let me go back for just a second. I don't know what happened to this slide.
I think there's a delay on the.
Is it a delay? Okay. What I'll do is, as this is catching up, David asked me to remind everybody, because you don't know this, right before we got here, we went to a roll call in the first precinct or district. I'm not sure if it's a precinct or district. I think it's a precinct. We went there, and what happened was David was there last week, and they asked him a question about policies. If you're a police officer, and I've been a police officer for 33 years, I'm retired now, but I was a cop in Massachusetts. You probably figured that out already. Just cut to the chase. I was a cop there, and then I went to LA in 1987 and joined them. But they have a concern about policies, and really one of their concerns about the policy is it concise, is it clear? They want to know what they're being held accountable for. So they were firing questions at him, and he did the right thing. He said, look, I'm the boss. I don't know all the details, but I'm going to come back next week with the people who know the details, and that's where we were. We were in front of a whole bunch of cops in the first precinct, and we answered the question. And one of the reasons that I talked about in Lisa's, the point on policies, I said I wouldn't call it's more concise because there's a lot of detail, and she talked about all those sessions on it. But it definitely is more clearer. But from your perspective, they're going to do something that is going to be really good. And they hired a software company. They're going to create an app. So if you're out in the field and you have this app, you plug it in and you'd say, is this a level 2 use of force or not? They can put it in and immediately give them the answer. So that is a great thing. And also they'll kind of alleviate some of their fears too. I talked about training. I'm heavily involved in the point on training, and that when they get into training, it's very scenario-based oriented, and they're going to get it. We're going to do a recap. In fact, when I go through this presentation, I'm going to show you it. I'll show you a slide right from the lesson plan. So let's give David a round of applause for, he could have left him in the dark. He went out there. That's what a monitoring chief should do. That builds support for the police. They literally. All right, if I can go backwards. All right, now we're going to segue over into training, which I'm the point on training and on use of force. And what I hope to accomplish in the next 15 to 20 minutes is, one, talk to you about MPD's training process. How do they go from a training needs assessment to training delivery, but also talk about my role in it. So it's going to be two parts. I'll explain to you how we hold them accountable, what our expectations are, and so on. And hopefully at the end, I'll ask you if you know a little bit more about MPD training, a little bit more about how we'll hold them accountable. This first slide up here, if you look up there, it'll say P, that's paragraph 183, and then paragraph 184. Those are, when a paragraph's written, there'll be specific requirements written within the paragraph. So as I take you down the training process, we're going to think about this slide. Now, when we take this job on, the first thing we do as a monitor and an independent evaluator, in this case, is we do an analysis of the paragraph itself. And that's the first bullet at the bottom. And we have to develop measures of effectiveness. They need to know what we're going to hold them accountable to. This is not any secret. We have meetings about it. We ask them, do you understand this MOE? Because we're going to hold you accountable for it. So that's the first step. Now, to achieve that MOE, there's a lot of action items. And these are basically, both of us do that. So MPD will do it. There'll be a lot of work to achieve that MOE. We do it too. We're going to capture all the work that I do. We'll put her into the tracker. We'll talk about trackers a little bit later, how we track compliance to make sure that we make a final consideration for the bottom one, which is substantial compliance. In order for them to get substantial compliance, ELEFA, like a point like me, my bosses, and then MDHR, Minnesota Department of Human Rights, they got to agree to it too. So just keep that in your back of your head. We're going to now go walk through the process. All right, if you look at this, hopefully you see these boxes. They were supposed to be in color. I don't know what happened, but it looks like it's more black and white, but these are the 4 boxes. And what this is the training process to take you from creating a training needs assessment up to delivery. I'll walk you through this so that you know, and then we're going to show you actual examples from MPD when we work with them to develop it and so on. So this first box up here, you'll see, as part of a training needs assessment, you got to conduct a bunch of focus groups. We'll talk about that in a different slide. You got to do an analysis of national trends. Think of this as the research end. Before you create the training plan, you have to go out there and do a lot of research. You know, there's lots of places you can get feedback. Police Executive Research Forum, the government, federal government has a whole bunch of them, the National Institute of Justice. There could be periodicals, Police Chief Magazine, and so on. So they need to go ahead and conduct this analysis, because if a lot of other police departments are on this training, then maybe you ought to be on the training too. So think of it that way. You don't want to miss the boat, and it's very easy to figure out what these trends are. If you look at this right here, job task analysis, every place I've ever worked, there's either a city human resources department or a civil service that establish what they call a job task analysis. So if you want to be a police officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, all of them has task and competency lists to go for that promotion itself. So when you're designing training, you always want to take a quick look at what those are, especially when you get into the realm of supervision. They need to be able to complete those type of competencies and those types of tasks. So this is like the research. You're going to use that to leverage when we leverage creating a training plan. And over there, I'll talk in detail. There are additional slides in a second. We're going to talk in detail about that. But the third phase is after you did your research, you created the plan, now you got to create the curriculum. If you look at that third bullet there, incorporate new policy, that's a super important step. Lisa just beat that to death in this meeting and a whole bunch of other meetings. Yeah, it was great, by the way. And so that's very important. So when they're developing the curriculum, obviously it has to meet the policy and so on. And then what you have to do, the next step on that is to select your cadre. After you select the cadre, there's training, what they call train-the-trainer. They have to look at the curriculum, then you got to practice doing it. If they can't do it, you got to rewrite the curriculum. There's a whole big process to this whole thing. And the last one over there is delivering the training. If you look at that bullet there, you got to assess it. A simple way to do that is when they walk in the room, the police officers, you give them a pre-test. Before you actually train them at all, give them a test on the topic. Then you go through the training. At the end, you're going to give them another test. And hopefully, if you did your job right, the percentages go up. And historically, I've seen them go up tremendous amounts. And that's just one simple way. There's a whole bunch of others. And then over here, you got feedback. When you perform in a class, you're going to ask the students in the class to write an evaluation. The evaluation is about the instructor or about the curriculum itself. Good feedback. I was the director of the police academy and LAPD. I used to watch those things like a hawk. If there was a particular instructor who was getting rated low, then you retrain them or you kick them out. Basically, they can't be there any longer. All right. If this will go for it. Let's talk in detail about actually how to do it. This is a page right out of MPD's training needs assessment. And before I get into this, when we came into this assignment, the city had a training needs assessment, but it was very global in nature. I read it. It said things like the training facilities are inadequate. They are. Then it said they don't have enough instructors. They don't. And then they said they need to go from more lecture-based curriculum modality in the classroom teaching to more adult learning theory and techniques and so on, and they need to do that. What it was not, though, remember the diagram, create a training needs assessment that feeds into the training plan? It was not that at all. So they were way off base. They didn't know how to do it. I had to step in and teach them that. That's called technical assistance. That's a big role of all of us. If they don't know how to do it, we have to teach them how to do it. And then later, they got to prove that they could do it, and then we'll hold them accountable for it. So that was definitely a a thing we need to teach them. And I want to do a quick shout out, some of the players over there. You know, Chief Johnson from the New Orleans Police Department, he is the basically academic dean down there in New Orleans. That was a consent decree I worked with. Michael was the chief of police of that department. He actually helped out. What I found over the years is that if you work with a department, they're very, very willing to work with another department that's now in a consent decree or a settlement agreement, and I just want to give them a quick little shout out. So if you're paying attention, I guess, to this right here, what happens, I think this got mixed up a little bit, but there's a methodology written in there, and then you have to go out there and do focus groups. So let me just get off this slide. This is a little distracting because it's so slow. I'll just do it off the top of my head. But so when you do a focus group, yeah, we're gonna, at the end, there's gonna be Q&A. So we'll do that. So when you do a focus group, in this particular training needs assessment, there are 10 groups we looked at. One was internal affairs, one was command staff, street cops, but also the community. So we went ahead and we interviewed the community. And you're gonna ask them a specific set of questions. The first questions are always open-ended. And what I mean by that, we simply get them in the room and say, hey, from the perspective of the community, what do you think about training? What would you recommend to MPD to improve on training? And you're gonna get answers like, hey, they gotta be more respectful, they gotta be, treat people courteously and all that type of stuff. It's good, but it's not specific. Then as you go along in that focus group, you're gonna ask more specific questions. And MPD has to deliver on some very big training topics. One is use of force. One is non-discriminatory policing, stop, search, citation, and arrest. So the questions go from open-ended to specific, because when you're going to take all that information, and remember there's 10 groups, so you got dozens of pages of information, you want to look for commonalities. If the community is saying this is an issue, IA says we're getting trends with this, it's an issue, the street cops say it, well, it's an issue. And you got to actually take that type of information, and what you do is you take those bullets and you convert them into training objectives. If you know anything about training, I'm not assuming anybody knows a whole lot about it, that forms the basis of creating a lesson plan. You always begin a lesson plan with training objectives. You should be able to point to the training objectives to the curriculum or the scenario-based training exercises, and that's how that process works. I don't think, okay. Let me go back. All right, so here's the end result. So tremendous amount of work happened. It took months and months and months. On the left is the training plan. That's 60 pages in length. The training plan will identify things like what's the philosophy of MPD's training? What are the 7 steps to create the training? I talked about 4, but there's actually 7 in there. Other things are in there is like who is the partners that we work with to create the training? And of course, the big ones are what classes are we gonna do next year? And specifically, what in-service classes are we gonna design and deliver to meet the needs of like the settlement agreement? And it'll be very specific. It would say something like use of force needs 16 hours of training, and it's going to be given because it meets the needs of settlement agreement paragraph 58, 59, 112, 113 subsection B. That's all in there. The right side one is the actual final training needs assessment. That's 75 pages long. Remember those 10 groups of people? They give dozens of pages sometimes of the feedback. And what you need to do with that, if you went back to the first bullet about training priorities, that bullet said you need to look at it and make a decision. There's so much information, you can't train to all that. So you have to look at it and you put it into a high, a medium, or a low category. All highs will get written into curriculum, all of them. The mediums, most of them, and if we don't address it like this year, you put it on the queue for maybe next year. A lot of the lows are good suggestions, but not necessarily something that you had built into the training. I wish that Commander Brown was here. I invited him and Director Williams. I'll talk about him in a second. I wanted them in the front row because I believe that this is the best annual training plan and the best training needs assessment I've ever seen. It's outstanding. I sent it to the DOJ. I've done a lot of work for the DOJ in the past. I think it'll be a model for the nation. So even though they're not here, let's give them a big round of applause. All right, now we got the plan. Let's go backwards. Now we got the plan. Now you got to develop the curriculum. I'm going to take you through all the different steps. They did something that is outstanding. They hired a PhD to be the Director of Police Training and Education. That's Dr. Williams. It's so important. I've been in this game for a long, long time. You need a manager, which is the director of the academy. In this case, it's Commander Brown and MPD. But you need that professional. You need that university-type professor that's going to be a checks and balance in the classroom. What Dr. Williams does is he is in charge of all curriculum development, all instructional development. So if it happens in the classroom, he makes the call on it. And you want that because on the police side, a lot of times, you know, the warrior concept and all that, they want to do tactical training and this type of training, whatever. When you have somebody like this, you stop that. They're going to make sure that all the training is appropriate, not only towards the settlement agreement or Minnesota Post, but they're going to give an academic spin to it. They're going to ensure that you're going to use adult learning techniques in the classroom. Give them a commendation on that. That was great. All right, so what does training look like? When I look at that right there, that's a snapshot of a lesson plan. If you look up there, I don't know if you can read it, but that's a policy suite. At the beginning, you got to not only write the policy, but you got to train to it and talk about it. Before I get into detail explaining why this is professional, just in a quick look for me there, I know it's professional. You got to back up a second. MPD needed to learn how to embrace like adult learning theory and problem-based learning. They had instructional development course that was really basic, standard in nature. So you can't jump into this style of training unless you set the basis first. So Dr. Luann Pinnell, who was by Dr. Williams on the LAPD, she's now a national consultant, stepped in here and actually provided IDC very professional, state-of-the-art. We taught them, all their instructors, how to actually go in the classroom and how to do this new modern type of training. In addition to that, they've also been sent to a lot of classes, specifically on this use of force. We sent them to California Post, instructor development for use of force scenarios. And it showed tremendously. I just had reviewed the first day of use of force training, and it looks really, really good. Both us and MDHR agree it's a big step from their previous training. Why this looks great to me, if you look over here on the left side, you probably can't tell what it is and read it. But this format is called a split screen format. Left side is content for the instructor. That's called an expanded course outline to 3 levels, professionally done. The right side is instructor notes. That tells the instructor how to prepare for that particular segment, reinforce certain points, how to run a learning activity. Learning activity is something like a role play situation or take a case study, read it, do a review, and do a teach back. Very, very good. This is one page. That one day of training is probably dozens and dozens of pages, and they would be all explained out. So when I talk about going down this training process, I'm trying to, hopefully what I'm pointing out to you is like they have really gotten much, much better in their development of the curriculum. All right, once you develop the curriculum, obviously you have to deliver it. This is the last step. This is actually a calendar that's in the training plan. And by the way, I think that training plan is posted online. If it is, don't hold me accountable, but I think it is. Go look at it. It looks outstanding. Like I said, it's a model. This will be in there. Quick thing about a calendar and why you want to do it. They have capacity issues. We talked about it earlier. Their facilities aren't great. They're limited number of classrooms. They don't have a whole lot of instructors. So it's important that when you get to this level and you're going to kind of put the calendar together, there can't be conflicts involved. You may need the instructors in the January to March thing to teach over here. So you don't want to put those classes together. That's just the way you put a calendar together. But one thing I do want to say about the calendar, and we obviously like timelines. We like to keep them to timelines. But in all my experience, I got decades of training police officers. It's better to do the training, develop the training, and deliver the training right than rushed. Don't rush it, do it right. If there's a legitimate reason why you have to delay something, because it's going to make the training better, then that's what you do. All right. This was not on the training process, but actually it's something that we always do, and this is called training compliance. Unfortunately, the top of this, let's go backwards. The top of this doesn't say it, but if it had the block up there, it would say training compliance. But let me explain what this is. This is a training tracker. So what I have to do, the onus of proving the MOE, the measure of effectiveness, is on them. But I've been in this game so long, we have to teach them how to present to us the materials, not only that it looks good and professional like the lesson plan, but how are they proving that they did what's in that particular paragraph. So if you look up here to the left, this would be the paragraph, and it'll say 56, 56A. If you went to the settlement agreement and read 56, you'd see subsection A, subsection B, subsection C. Each one of it may say subsection A, but it may have 2 or 3 requirements written within subsection A. So what we do is we break down every single one of those requirements. It's very detailed, and they have to explain where they did it in the training. So if you look in this one, this is where Lisa comes in. We'll point out where we modified the actual policies. If you go over here, this is the header of the lesson plan, and if you could read this, it would explain exactly where it is. This is in lesson plan, it's on page 5. It's also in scenario-based exercise 9. That makes my job in MDHR very easy, because once they give us the curriculum, this is also part of the package. They are proving to us that they understood every single subsection, and this is where it is, and go ahead and make the call. So I don't want to beat up smart sheets and all that, but this goes on throughout every single paragraph we got, and it's all in depth. When we mentioned smart sheet, Lisa probably would melt down a little bit, but that's an inside joke. But it's all totally detailed, and we get to make the call based on all of it. All right, last 2 slides, what's been done in the last year. I won't talk in depth about a whole bunch of these, but they have a contract with Minnesota CIT. I think Janae's here. I don't know. Put your head. Yeah, stand up. She's actually the lead instructor for him. She's a mental health practitioner, professional. She's done the training for CIT in her team. So that's been done. Actually, they're doing the 40-hour class this week. And so we looked at the 8-hour refresher last year. We looked at the refresher for 2025, and we're also looking right now at the 40-hour course. That's that way. I just covered that. That's partial compliance. Engagement with minors training, that's been done. There are some policy issues that still need to be worked out. Once those are worked out, we'll build it into training. You cannot get compliance unless you develop the policy and then you prove it, it's embedded within the training, and you successfully deliver it. I talked about Dr. Williams. That's hired director of PT&E, outstanding. I completed for a 40-hour IDC. That's the professional training that they needed to do to move forward. And contracted for use of force. Let me go into what's ahead, but let me make one comment on that last one. Now that we're 1 year into this, what did that last slide say to me? It says to me that we've established a baseline, okay? Now that they understand, I feel confident that they understand, they went through instructor development, they went through classes to learn to develop curriculum, and more importantly, they proved it. They sent it to us, it passed the muster of both us and MDHR, it's good. And they need to do that because what's ahead is huge. This year is going to be very, very big. Let me get this up. We're going to have to approve and look at the 40-hour class. I just talked about that. Use of force training is 3 days. I talked about the first day of training. It looks really good. We had a meeting today. I think the second day and the third day will be good, but they have to prove it to us. They have to give us the curriculum. They have to actually, we have to observe it and make sure it's good, but they're on track. That looks pretty good. I'll just put them up. Field training officer, that one, it needs work, quite frankly. There was a period of time, if you look, there was an audit that went down. Sad. It was a sad situation, but we need to build that up. I'm working with them on a 40-hour course. We're working on SOPs, new SOPs and policies. You absolutely need field training officers out there that teach the recruits that come out of the academy how it works on the street. Has to be professional level, so that is a work in progress for us. This next one is huge. This is our biggest challenge, let me say, for this year. It's 32 hours of training. It's on non-discriminatory policing. SSCA means stop, search, and arrest. That's like, how do you stop a person? Is it legally a stop? All this. It's very complicated, a lot of work in there. You know, disorderly conduct, obstruction of a legal process. That's a work in progress. Our goal is to hopefully be able to deliver that. It looks like right now, maybe at the beginning of next year, we had a meeting about that, but that will be a huge, huge undertaking. New supervisors, another thing that was an issue. They had a period of time on MPD that they didn't have a new supervisor school, which is bad. When you get promoted, you got to go to a school, you got to learn how to do it. That's a work in progress. They are developing the new curriculum. They are creating new policies and so on that, but that's be a big undertaking for us this year. Force investigation, we talked a little bit about that. Our Linda, you know, they have to be trained. We're introducing new levels of use of force, level 1, level 2, level 3. They need to know how to go to a scene, conduct an investigation. Are they properly putting in the right level? Are they doing the right thing? That training is very close. I think they're going to submit it to me soon. I think we'll be able to look at it and approve it. And there are other supervisory leadership programs. You should, from time to time, provide your supervisors, your frontline supervisors, leadership training. They hired a vendor for that. They're developing the curriculum. Hopefully I'm going to get my hands on that soon and we'll be able to deliver it. So I think, yeah, internal affairs, we talked about that one. But that's it. So just by a show of hands, in this 20, 25 minutes, do you know a little bit more about the training process and how we hold them accountable for it? No? Yes? Okay. All right, well, thank you. You're a great audience. Thanks.
Was I supposed to have slides like everybody keeps handing me clickers? Do I have a slide? Let's see. Oh, not much of a slide. All right, so I hope, as Bill's saying, you've gotten a sense of how much work has been done and how labor intensive it is to really, you know, rebuild in many ways an organization, in this case the police department. So what's coming up next, just briefly, our next reporting period ends in 2 weeks, March 30. Our goal is to get our report out to release it 45 to 60 days after. We build it as we go, but then you got to assemble it all. The parties have 30 days to comment. It takes us some time to incorporate any changes we need to make. So there's always a lag, but our goal is to get it out by the middle to end of May. So look for that. Between now and then, we'll be continuing to work on the policies and training, and we are focused on meeting as many of the year one deadlines that the department had set for itself as possible. They won't meet all of them. They'll meet many of them, and they'll keep doing that work. We will have our next public meeting in July. We'll have a date. I learned tonight it's going to be in Councilwoman Vita's district, so I think we're looking forward to that. And beyond that, in year two, obviously training will be a big focus. But the other thing we'll be doing is the not glamorous work of implementing the data systems and all the infrastructure you need to run a large, complex police department like this one. And so we look forward to reporting to all of you on the progress as we go along. All right, enough from us. Now we have time for questions, hopefully answers. I'm going to come back because I think this woman had raised her hand first before, so I'd like to start there.
One, two.
Very basic question.
that can't be dealt with reams of policies. I want to know what you're going to do and how you're going to handle helping the Minneapolis Police Department not have another Chauvin who's in charge of training other officers. That's what I want to know. It's a very simple question.
Well, I think some of the answers are in what you've heard. We're going to have better policies. We're going to have better training. But as important, perhaps more important, we're going to have accountability measures. So we will be able to watch how supervisors supervise and control the actions and oversee the actions of the officers that report to them. Supervision is really the key to driving sustained compliance, and that is going to be one of our focuses over the next year. So the simple answer is it is establishing the systems and controls that make sure that supervisors know what officers under their command are entitled to do and required to do, and making sure they hold them accountable for when their actions don't comply with policy at every step of the way. And when we see, as we will, an officer who does the wrong thing, we're also going to look to see, well, did their supervisor do the things they should have done to hold them accountable? Were they monitoring to see any warning signs that an officer might be prone to do something wrong? So that's really a focus of what we're going to do. Yes, sir.
This is a very impressive process that you put in place. And it obviously has more time to go before you know where you're ending up. But where I'm sitting in my home in lower northeast, and people are sitting at home in southwest, how is the public going to know what you've done works? What are the signs of it working?
All right. So there'll be more publicly reported information. So we will track data. You'll report data on use of force. We will report what we see in audits, but we'll look at use of force. We'll look at misconduct complaints. A large part of this process is building in the transparency so that not only the department can hold its people accountable, but you can hold the department accountable for when we go. So it is going to take engagement. Like we can't do this. That's why we try and do these meetings, to bring you all along the process. We've talked about an implementation liaison council that we're going to begin to form. Like, we want as many people to participate in this process as we can, so that you all will know and you all will see. Now look, I don't expect most people to come home after a long day at work and they gave the kids dinner and paid the bills, and to then say, let me log on and see what the Minneapolis Police Department has done today, right? That's not what we're trying for. But we know that many of you in the room do focus on that. And what we're really depending on is that you will continue to focus on it. And so when people at home ask what's going on with the Minneapolis Police Department, some of you will say, I can tell you exactly what's going on with the Minneapolis Police Department, what they're doing well and what they're not doing well.
Carolina, we got some people over here too.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alyssa, so this is not necessarily a question, more so of a comment. It's so out of touch to emphasize and focus almost exclusively on policies and training being in place before any kind of actual monitoring is going to happen. Besides, meddling with CCPO review panels, what's happening for going after all the abuse still going on by the police, what are we doing about these issues? There's a presumption that MPD can be trained out of its culture of abuse, which continues to see Black, brown, and indigenous people abused by police, falsely arrested and incarcerated by MPD, like Cornelius Jackson, Mahdi Ali, and when there are victims ignored by police, like Allison Lucier and Davis Maturi. What are we doing about this?
We are acutely aware of what brought us here. As Chief Harrison would say in New Orleans, his department earned its consent decree, and that's true for the Minneapolis Police Department. We are acutely aware that it didn't start with George Floyd. That was really the straw that broke the camel's back. So we understand the frustration, the trauma, and quite frankly, the distrust that exists in this community. And I couldn't stand up here and probably give you an answer that would satisfy you that we can change it. All I can do is ask you to take this journey with us. That's why we come and report to you what we've done, so you can hold us accountable. I hope that you'll keep coming to these meetings. I hope you will see changes and improvement, but if you don't, come back and tell us.
How can we connect with you now so when we have these issues right away, we can report them right away?
Exactly.
We have a website and a
We need
QR.
direct contact. Those websites do nothing for us. Like, what's going on? We really need, like, direct contact.
Well, we have a mailbox, an email. We're here. You can talk to us. You can call us. Yeah.
Sign up to be the community liaison, and sign up on ELEFA's website to join the community organizations so that you won't be shut out. It's right on their website. They're taking it, the questionnaire, right? That's to get more people signed up, and community organizations. I'm surprised you didn't mention that. But it's right on their website. You can go there and sign up.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. You had talked earlier about policy, and thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation on policy. As you mentioned, Communities United Against Police Brutality has done an enormous amount of work evaluating those policies. What we haven't seen is any feedback to tell us what parts of our recommendations have been adopted. So how will we be able to see that information?
Yeah, so at this point, we are in the process of nearly approving the use of force suite. We're in the last stages, so I am assuming that MPD is likely going to want to get the official approval before they're going to go back to you all to discuss the changes. I'm not exactly sure of MPD's plan to when they're going to post or reach back out to discuss, but until those things are, we've got the bow on the gift, I imagine that we're not quite ready to share that. Though that makes perfect sense that as soon as those things are approved, we know what the final format is going to be, the final content is going to be. That would be the opportunity or the appropriate time to return back, either to meet with you all and or to post the updated policies for the community to see, because absolutely, you all have been providing extensive feedback. I think everyone who has been reading that feedback is well aware of the amount of effort that has gone into it, and it's seriously appreciated.
The community is entitled to that.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So I really appreciate getting into the real nitty-gritty of the operational enhancements we're doing, the checkboxes we're creating, and the checkboxes that we're checking off. But one thing I wanted to check in about is about how ELEFA and MPD fits into the larger climate of everything right now. In particular, it's really important to acknowledge the space that we're going in right now is the Ukrainian Event Center right now. And top of mind is President Trump's personal threats of withdrawing temporary protected status of those fleeing the war right now. And as somebody who's worked with the Ukrainian Center and wants to welcome our neighbors into our community and ensure their safety, just as the Fox anchor said that the things at the Capitol shouldn't impact what's happening in the consent decree. At the same time, right now, House Note 16 in St. Paul is being debated about collaborating with ICE, between ICE and MPD, and how that might be a threat to some of our community members here. And one of the concerns I had was along the lines of how ELEFA sees that it will fit everything together such that MPD will fit in there while still complying with the settlement agreement, especially there's a whole chapter on non-discrimination and where these are obvious threats against that non-discrimination clause. So I'm curious whether you guys can speak to how ELEFA would advocate for some of our neighbors that I want to welcome here and ensure they're safe when they're threatened by external factors.
So I should probably take a step back and just explain our role. Our role is governed by the settlement agreement. We don't run the department. We can't order anybody to do anything. We're not an investigative agency in that sense. Our role, we really wear a couple of hats. We monitor, we review what they're doing, and we report to them and to you all what we've observed. An important part of what we do, as you've heard tonight, is we provide technical assistance and support and guide them and use our expertise to help them make these changes. So what I'm saying is what we do is important, but it's precisely described and defined, and we don't really have ability to go outside of that. Now, there are important points of intersection. So non-discriminatory policing, obviously, as we look at that, we will be considering the environment in which policing occurs, and issues of discrimination will change. And so we'll look at that. Clearly, there's been changes as a result of the Trump administration, certainly with respect to policing. And all I can say, I think, is that, so we'll do our best to drive implementation of the settlement agreement, being mindful of the context in which it operates. But outside of that, our role is narrow. So I don't want to promise anything that I can't deliver.
So to clarify, are you saying that your powers in the settlement agreement give you no powers in protecting, like, our neighbors from ICE raids and such?
The answer is we don't have that power, but we can hold the MPD accountable for making sure it complies with the law and policies. But we're not an enforcement arm.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, my question was a follow-up to the answer that you gave to this woman, which I don't think you really substantially answered. And that is, I want specifics about the way the supervisors will hold the police officers accountable, and I mean specific mechanisms, and also how the supervisors themselves will be held accountable, and, you know, up the chain thereof, but more particularly how the community will hold these officers accountable. I want specific mechanisms and how those mechanisms are different than before Chauvin.
Fair enough. So essentially, our role, and to the extent we have power, it is the power that comes from you all in terms of the agreement. Because under the agreement, all we can really do is report. But that's powerful. The city has made a commitment to implement the agreement, and what we've seen in other places is they are responsive. They don't want us to come out and say they're not doing what they said they would do. So the way we monitor, and as we get into it, someone I think referenced it, we will do audits. We will look at their conduct. We will look at body-worn cameras. We will see whether they are complying with their policies. And if they are not, I mean, we'll give them a chance to correct it, but then we will report. And one thing I've learned in my time here in Minneapolis, it's a very engaged community on these issues, and I think your elected officials will be very responsive. If beyond what they will do in response to our critique, they will respond if you all tell them they need to do a better job of complying with the agreement. Now, I should add one other important piece. Under the settlement agreement, it is overseen by a judge, a state court judge. And if the parties have a real dispute, or if we really felt they were just refusing to do the right thing, we do have the ability to raise that with the court, and the court might have the power to issue some sanction.
I've got someone back here. David, someone back here.
But you can't name an actual mechanism for accountability, just any mechanism.
It's in the consent decree.
Well, he's standing here, you can actually speak to it.
Well, yes, here are, I can give you the answer. I can't, you may not like it, but I can tell you the answer. So we can ensure that they follow their policies and their training. We can audit their actions to make sure that their actions on the street are complying with the policies and the training. We can make sure that supervisors are doing what they're supposed to do. And then we can report out our findings. So those are the mechanisms that have been given to us under the settlement agreement.
Comment back here.
Hi, my name's Lizzie Palmer. I've noticed that as ELEFA has come into being an independent monitor for the Minneapolis consent decree, that you talk about creating accountability for Minneapolis. And I've noticed that you have 2 former police chiefs in ELEFA who are neither from Minneapolis. They are sitting, with ELEFA, and they are on CCPO review panels.
Oh. No.
And that CCPO, not them specifically, but ELEFA itself is getting involved in CCPO panels.
We don't, no.
Well, I would like to defer to
Yes, you are.
Commissioner
You're
Gurian Sherman
sitting
over
in on
here.
them. Don't lie about that.
I'm not lying.
You are sitting in on the CCPO
Well, I'm sorry,
panels.
we're not on the panel, we monitor the panels.
You're not monitoring them, you're participating and giving technical assistance. We were told that at the last CCPO meeting.
My question for you
We
today
don't sit- I
is,
just want to be clear, we're not members of the panel, we don't sit on the panel, but yes, we monitor the panels to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's what we are required to do.
No, you're not.
well, my question for you today is that you claim to be an independent monitor, but you have two former police chiefs in ELEFA who are monitoring with the review panels on the CCPO. My question for you is, do you understand the definition of a conflict of interest?
Yes, I do. Now, look.
Can you explain how this is a conflict of interest? And can you explain how this is unjust to the people of Minneapolis? Because the MPD has not shown any accountable action in their entirety of their entire history. We've seen it time and time again with their mistreatment of black, brown, and indigenous people. And furthermore, I would like to echo comments made earlier about the concerns of MPD potentially working with ICE in the future. Thankfully, that's not happening now, but if we cannot ensure there's accountability for people like Cornelius Jackson or Allison Lucier, who has still, after almost a year of her murder, has never once had an investigation even conducted by the MPD, how can we ensure that not only you will keep people in Minneapolis safe who have been here for a long time, but our newcomers here, people we have welcomed with open arms like the Ukrainian community here in Minneapolis?
First, you can do it by continuing to attend these meetings. Here are our reports. Look at the information that's put out, and you can hold us accountable for what we tell you. As to the role, let me just explain. So I'm not a former police officer. I was the deputy monitor, I guess I still am the deputy monitor in New Orleans. But out of that experience, what I came to believe is that police and the public could work together to achieve policing practices that work better for the police and for the communities they serve. So I formed a nonprofit to do that. We then applied to be the monitor. We were encouraged to apply. Our organization as a whole, our belief is that there is one set of standards that work. The things that keep the public safe also keep police safe. The things that good policing does to fight crime and protect the public are good for the police and the public.
But the MPD is not fighting crime or protecting the public in Minneapolis.
If you could let me finish. So we don't work for Minneapolis. These former chiefs, all of them have national reputations for being people who help communities achieve exactly the things that you hope to achieve here. So the short answer is we're independent of Minneapolis. I believe the fact that we're not from here is a strength. We have a lot to learn about this community, but we don't come with the baggage or views on it. We come here to be honest brokers in the process of making it a better police department. And as I encourage this other woman, I hope you'll come to these meetings and hear what we do, and you can judge.
I think many of us here doubt that, but
I'm
thank
sorry.
you. I think many of us here doubt what you said, but thank you.
I understand.
Mr. David, I'm over here. Hi, my name is Farheel Khalif. I am very happy to see you guys coming back again. Won't you agree that this burden of, I see the people here today, this doesn't look like the people are being affected the most when it comes to the police brutality in the city of Minneapolis. So I'm hoping that someone who's immigrant, but be part of a community table that we've been meeting at the UCMT, as you know, we would like to see as your next meeting better than this. Because the last 3 meetings that I've been to, I can see the same audiences attending. What that means is really good, beautiful people. But sometimes we need to get deep, untouchable, marginalized communities. People that who's been affected the most, the reason that you are the independent being hired to be in the city of Minneapolis to do this job, to figure it out, what the African American, the Native community, and us, the immigrant black communities are feeling. So I believe you guys are doing a great job, but let's do better. Thank you.
I agree. And we agree, and we look for help in getting the word out and getting people to come to these meetings, and we're looking for other ways to engage as many people as possible. So yes, we would like more turnout and more engagement. Any help you can give us in achieving that, we would welcome.
We've got one back here, too.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Noah, and I was born and raised in Minneapolis. My first time experiencing police brutality at the hands of MPD was on a playground when I was 14. And so, excuse me if my nervous system is a little activated tonight when I hear former cops and cop-adjacent people talking about holding police accountable in Minneapolis. I'm part of an organization called the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice, and we are trying to get an all-elected civilian police accountability commission here in Minneapolis that would actually hold police accountable here. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, the city of Minneapolis is paying ELEFA $1.2 million to oversee the state decree, and another $750,000 if approved for the federal consent decree, if I'm understanding that correctly.
I don't know about the federal consent decree. But
Okay, well, that's a lot of money that Minneapolis taxpayers are paying ELEFA, is the point that I'm getting at. And so it's disheartening to, again, see former police and police-adjacent people, like this is like holding Minneapolis police, we're expected to believe that you all are going to hold Minneapolis police accountable and oversee this consent decree. I just don't trust that. I don't have any trust in that process.
I understand.
And we need real police accountability.
I understand. I'm not asking you to trust, just asking you to watch what we do. We recognize we have to earn that. And for what it's worth, when I go to roll calls, they're just as skeptical about who we are and what our motives are and whether we will make that. We get it. And we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and we'll continue to receive your feedback as we do it. Yes, sir. Chuck.
The last time you were here, you stressed that you wanted to leave structures in place that will help maintain the changes that occur during the settlement agreement period. Some of those structures might be in the settlement agreement. Some of those structures are outside the settlement agreement. Both the findings report of the MDHR and the findings report of the Department of Justice were very critical of how cases were handled, cases were dismissed, cases were sent for coaching, how they were investigated by the OPCR. Because of the Data Practices Act, it's very difficult for anyone to have oversight of that after you leave. One of the structures that is in place for that oversight, however, is the Community Commission on Police Oversight. And a provision in city law has required for 23 months now that every complaint, investigation, findings, discipline, every single complaint be sent to all the commissioners in an anonymized form. An anonymized report is supposed to be sent on every complaint. At the time of the completion of your study, September 2024, that ordinance was in effect for 17 months. At that time and today, it has not been complied with a single time. And there have been more than 700 complaints filed with the OPCR and Internal Affairs since that time. I was very disappointed this was not mentioned in your report. It's not in the settlement agreement, but it's a structure in place that will maintain the changes that you expect to happen during the settlement period.
That's fair. It's not in the settlement agreement. I'm aware of the issue. I can't make this, but it's something we'll look at. We think we can help make it better. So we'll see what we can do on that.
I've been aware of it for at least a year from me.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm aware of the issue. I'm just saying, I'm not the person who can fix the issue, and I know you've been in touch with the people who can fix the issue, and I appreciate that you copy me on, but I appreciate the situation, and we'll do what we can.
Dave, I have someone back here, and then I will make my way up to the front on this side of the room.
Okay.
Thank you, David, and I just wanted to thank you for accepting my data request under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. I was the person that requested that. I look forward to hearing your response. I hope it's more positive than these other people have had. In short, I'm hoping that you guys don't keep off the table the Coffee City option. Look it up. I'd like you to make an independent.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you?
Sure, I can just announce it myself. So
Can you come?
I just want to let you know that thank you for taking my Data Practices Act request. Hoping that we'll have more productivity and cooperative to this with you, with me and you, and hopefully you can share what's public with these people that have already tried to request. Secondly, hope that you guys don't take off the table, although it would be probably pretty taboo for you, the Coffee City option. Feel free to look up Coffee City in 2024 on Google. You guys can find out what's going on with that. Secondly, I had a quick question for, let's see here, independent evaluator Harrison. He's the, I think the ex-police chief of New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. It's just a two-part question. What are you going to do to address what I believe to be considered dissuasion of police reports, where people try to peacefully make police reports and they either are denied or they flat out making a CAD, which ends up never going to investigation in the midst of assignment of a police report, leaving them miscellaneous or something else that never gets investigated. Secondly, from my source from the city of Minneapolis, the consent decree was picked by, the party was picked by the city of Minneapolis. So I'll be assured that the mayor and special interests don't get their favorable outcome in place of the people's true will. I mean, we have no choice in our elections. It's one party controlled. I'm not saying Republicans are better because they're not, but we have to have for the people, by the people elections, and it's not happening. And so, in short, we want accountability. It's not happening. And we also want to be sure that when we're getting help, that we get help, and it's not happening. Thank you. If you can kind of both help those questions for you.
Thank you for the question. As you heard both David and me say, we will, as we monitor, our responsibility is to make sure we report on whether or not the department is meeting the objectives of the settlement agreement that it agreed to. And so they are doing the work. It's our job to report out to you and to a judge that they are doing it and that they are not doing it. And so, like we are doing tonight, it is our role to bring that information to you. Once again, we don't have any enforcement authority. We cannot compel them to do it, but our role is to monitor and to report, which we will do. We are independent. We are not persuaded by any interest, any political party, and so I wanted to make that clear. Great point. To the gentleman, I understand your points are great points. You have a lot of mistrust, and we get that. I was a chief in 2 departments, in 2 cities that had communities who distrusted the police and distrusted the process of reform. Department of Justice called New Orleans the most troubled department in America. That's a precise quote. And it was the most troubled department in all of America. And there was a lot of distrust. I am proud because David was the monitor in New Orleans who was monitoring the department that I was the chief. And then I went to Baltimore and we had a community that distrusted the police and distrusted the reform process. And so once again, I got that experience. So I'm honored now to be on the team to help monitor, because I know exactly what it feels like and exactly what needs to be done and what to look for. And we know what to look for in a department that's under this obligation to reform itself. And let's be clear, they are the ones required to do the transformation of their own department, the terms they agreed to. We know exactly what to look for. And to the extent they don't know how to do it, we are the ones with the experience to help them do it. We're not asking, it will not be overnight. It will not be fast. It is hard, but we are committed to the task. And we will help them and teach them and coach them if they don't know how to do it. The two things they have to have is the will to do it and the capacity to do it. We believe they have the will. We will help them with capacity. But when they don't have the will, we're going to report that to you. And it is you, the community, who truly hold that department accountable. And I hope I've answered your question, and I hope I came back to at least explain a little bit why this team is such a dynamic team, and it's the right team at the right time for the Minneapolis Police Department. Because we have lessons learned, and we can actually help them avoid pitfalls. Mistakes that we made and that others have made, we can actually help them not make those mistakes, but to have success in a way that other departments around the country have not. But it will take time, and we get the mistrust. A lot has happened. All we're asking to do is to allow us to come report to you what it is we find. And we are not afraid of anyone. We don't report to anyone. We will give you the God's honest truth of whether they're doing it and whether they are not.
We commit to reporting to Bob Jacobson as head of DPS and also Drew Evans, head of DCA, when you find misconduct that gets to the level of dissuasion of police officers, not doing police reports and throwing cats out there. So we investigate criminal dissuasion if indeed it is found. And lastly, what is your comment on moonlighting by MPD, making over 150 an hour at times, over 200 an hour, doing part-time roles with city-owned property, federally funded property, which can be broad ways of use of federal resources. That's not what the government's paying to get their value for, nor are we.
Let me make sure I understand that first question. Is the first question about Minneapolis Police Department or
Correct.
Department of Public Safety?
Who I would suspect is dissuading, where you try to do a police report, they refuse to give you a police report. So you're stuck going to a precinct where an officer has to make a judgment call if they're going to give you a report. And often ends up considered to what's called deteriorated notation system of sorts, where it's falling into the black hole of no investigation, and crime victims don't get addressed, and therefore crime levels are artificially low intentionally by these means.
Any performance issue or behavior issue that is a violation of policy should, and well, obviously, and criminal law, yes, and criminal law, that is a known violation, that gets reported. If it's reported and someone fails to do their duty and that's investigated, not investigated because it's a violation of policy or investigated improperly, which makes it a violation of policy, that falls under our purview to monitor and to report out.
I apologize, we're happy to chat with you after, but we have a number of people who have questions, but we'll be here after. So,
I have another question
right
here, Dave.
Where?
Just right here. I'm right here. This is this gentleman right here. Right here. Sorry.
This is a training-related question. Has the MPD looked at involving community members in any of the role-playing scenario training, and not just involving them in the training itself, but also in the evaluation of the training? Thank you.
The answer, yes. There are several ways that is done. First off, they're creating right now what they call a professional advisory committee, and that's going to be made up of members of the community, also members like university professors and so on. They do hire professional actors. That was actually recently done. I've watched their work. It looks really, really good. If you do want to actually volunteer and become involved in it, I'll be glad to, if you meet me afterwards, anybody in the audience, I'll pass your name along to Commander Brown, who runs the police academy. They definitely want to embrace the community. I talked about it, some of the focus groups, and they're all on board on that. So just meet with me afterwards. I'll be glad to turn your information over.
I have someone back here.
You promised to come to the front. I just want to speak on behalf of the front people who.
Hi, so y'all are going to do the reports. Hopefully they comply, but if they don't, you'll come to us, right, and tell us the report, and then we'll hold them accountable. But the people of Minneapolis have been trying to hold the Minneapolis Police Department accountable for years, way before the consent decree, which is how we got here. If, like Chicago, if we had community control of the police, if we had people that we could actually talk to who could hold them accountable, that would be great. But what are the new mechanisms that suddenly our input is going to mean something now?
Well, now there's a court enforceable agreement with very specific requirements that has been missing in those other cities. But if the city or the department decides it's not going to cooperate, we're not special masters, we don't run them. So we do have to ultimately rely on their good faith willingness to commit, unless, we have to go to court. But right now, they have committed to it, they've embraced it, and we believe they will do it, and if they change, we'll tell you.
Question here.
I understand the skepticism.
Thank you. I'm Stacy Gurian-Sherman. I am a commissioner on the Community Commission on Police Oversight for Ward 9. I do want to address and just provide a couple of comments to what people provided. To the first question about field training officers, and nothing has been done to ensure that Derek Chauvins will not be in that place. However, Minneapolis for a Better Police Contract, which is a group I helped found and instill on the steering committee, we had a recommendation to include in the police contract a definition for what constitutes an officer in good standing to become a field training officer. We sent those recommendations to ELEFA, and they could have come forward and said, you know what, this is a really good idea, we should see this in the police contract. And, Mr. Douglas, what you did is basically what you're doing tonight. We don't have the power, we don't have this, we just monitor, we just. Just is a 4-letter word. You have a tremendous amount of authority. You have a bully pulpit. You are the eyes and ears and the muscle of the state judge and maybe a federal judge. So you absolutely could have come out and said which of those recommendations align with and are good for Minneapolis. You refuse to do that. And I hear a lot of you walking back and refusing to do things. I'm astounded on the question about how do people get involved. You didn't mention your own implementation liaison council.
I think I did.
Well, I had to bring it up, and then you're having a community liaison. Unfortunately, the qualifications for that liaison are so general, and you're going to pick all of these people. The community liaison, which I assume will be trained, you're going to choose the implementation liaison council. This is not what community engagement is about. There should be people on that who recuse themselves from being on the council who are going to help you choose. You know why? Because you have no one on Minneapolis on your team, and you keep bringing in people from the outside. So it's amazing to me that you don't bring that up, except that our colleagues in New Orleans have reported over and over again, community engagement, quote, collapsed under your leadership in New Orleans. So we don't want to see that here again. I do want to say, I think it's a real abuse of the community's goodwill to show up when you only give us 45 minutes in a 2-hour forum for question and answers. You're doing the minimum. Once every 4 months, you're not doing it once a month. 45 minutes over 4 months is about 11 and a half minutes a month. That's not enough. So you should be coming here and having forums that are nothing but engaging people. And then I want to make sure that everybody here understands, since January at the CCPO meetings, we have been told that ELEFA members of your team, including former police officers, are not just observing, but participating in providing technical assistance to the 3 commissioners and the 2 police officers on the review panels. I cannot begin to tell you, as a lawyer, as an activist, as just a person in the community, what a violation of confidentiality that is. How in the world could you justify a judge overseeing and going into the jury deliberation room, or a prosecutor or the defense attorney? You have no business being in the CCPO review panels, and that needs to end now. We have no idea what you're telling other commissioners. We don't know if it's in line with our training. all of this, for so many reasons, is incredibly disturbing. Then I want to focus on the federal consent decree. You know what's in that? New language that would mandate either the Internal Affairs Director or the Director of the Office of Police Conduct Review make a determination of their recommendation and whether officers are in violation and deserve discipline. So the federal consent decree would add another layer, and if that recommendation is not agreed to by the CCPO panel, we have to detail why we are in disagreement. You know what happened with that? A commissioner who probably served on more panels than any of us resigned. He will not have the whole process tanking, being corrupted, being biased. That is terrible. So I want to know, did ELEFA have a hand in that? You were certainly consulted during the negotiation process. How do we go from OPCR, IA staff not at all being involved in the review panels, and now you're sitting in on them? And how do we go to this language in the federal consent decree? What input did you have on both of those things?
We had no input on the federal. I'll let Chairwoman Reeves address that. Lisa. Carolina.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple comments. Hello, everyone. My name is LaTanya Reeves. I'm Chair of CCPO. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's coming and expressing your concerns. Everyone has valid concerns about where we are. I will say, in terms of the Independent Monitoring Group, Mr. Westbrook came and sat in on some of the panels, giving technical assistance. There was nothing wrong in my eyes with that, and someone who does investigations for a living, I was completely fine with them sitting in there. They did not speak on the panel itself, so we don't have members of this team giving us advice as to what to do in terms of the panel. They are independent monitors, so they are monitoring to make sure that we're doing the panels correctly, and so that's the role that I saw them in. I didn't see any other role, and I had no issue with them being present, and I do panels all the time. Unfortunately, some of the commissioners can't do panels or don't do panels, but I do several panels and have no issue. I just want to put that out there. And so I just want to say thank you guys for coming, because I'm listening to you too. I'm listening to the feedback that you guys are giving about CCPO, about what you want to see, about the work that they're doing. It's all valuable feedback, but I wanted to put that to that comment because it's not necessarily true. They do not come and speak on what we're actually doing in the panels.
It is true.
I would ask that you not interrupt me, because I didn't interrupt you. Thank you. It's respect. I appreciate that. And so what I'll say is I have a different perspective than Commissioner Gurry and Sherman, which is fine. We don't have to have the same perspective, but I do sit on panels. Thank you.
That's right. Stacy's the only one on the panel that stands up for the community. And that is the damn truth. That's the only one.
Sir, and she can have hers, sir. Thank you.
I didn't need you. Why did you cancel the April CCPO meeting if you care about the community? You canceled it. Where to go, public comment?
We're required to have 8 meetings a month, a year, and we've done it.
Amen.
Coward!
Oh, I wouldn't say no, sir. Thank you.
How many men you know named Lizzie?
We're at 8 o'clock now.
How many men you know named Lizzie? I know that's right.
I don't know your name. I'm sorry.
Yes, you do.
No, I know.
All right.
I go to those meetings all the time, so you know my name.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. And my apologies.
Not a man. That'd be plenty of time.
So it's 8 o'clock. We appreciate you all have devoted a lot of time. We can stay here for those who want to ask. We don't want to cut it off, but we also recognize that many people have lives to live and need to move on. So we thank you all for coming. We hope you'll come to our next meeting. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.